In the village of Kanyama, where the red earth clung to bare feet like a second skin and the sun rose every morning without mercy, people said life was not lived, it was endured. The huts stood close together, as if leaning on one another for strength, their tin roofs rattling whenever the dry wind passed through like an unwelcome visitor. Goats wandered freely, children chased dust instead of dreams, and hunger was spoken of in whispers, as though naming it would make it grow teeth. Mariama lived at the edge of the village, in a hut so small it seemed embarrassed by its own existence. Yet she kept it clean. No matter how poor a woman is, her dignity, the elders said, must never be allowed to starve. Mariama believed this with her whole heart. She was 38, but hardship had pressed years into her face. Her hands were rough from washing other people's clothes by the river, from pounding cassava until her wrists burned, from scraping survival out of days that offered nothing freely. Her husband, Musa, had died 4 years earlier, coughing his life away beneath the mango tree behind their hut. Tuberculosis, the healer said. Poverty, Mariama thought. The last thing Musa gave her before death was the cloth. It was not new, nor colorful like the fabrics worn by wealthier women, but it was strong and clean. A deep indigo wrapper with faint white patterns running through it like quiet memories. "Keep this," Musa whispered, his voice already half in the ground. "As long as you have this, you are not naked before the world." Mariama wrapped that cloth around her waist every day since. Her son, Sadiq, was 9 when his father died. A thin boy with eyes too large for his face, eyes that watched everything and forgot nothing. From the day Musa was buried, Sadiq learned the sound of hunger. It was not just the noise of an empty stomach, it was the way his mother's breath changed at night, the way she stared too long at boiling water before adding the smallest handful of grain, the way she smiled too quickly when neighbors asked if they had eaten. Every morning before sunrise, Mariama rose quietly so she would not wake Sadiq. She tied her cloth firmly, balanced a plastic bucket on her head, and walked to the stream. The water was brown and slow, but it was free. She washed clothes for other women, teachers' wives, traders, even the village chief's second wife once. For this, she earned coins that disappeared almost as soon as they touched her palm. Sadiq attended the village school 2 kilometers away. His uniform was faded, the seams holding on through stubbornness alone. He walked barefoot, his sandals long gone, clutching a notebook filled with more empty pages than written ones. Education was Mariama's rebellion against poverty. She believed knowledge could open doors even hunger could not lock. But school fees were ruthless. One afternoon, Sadiq returned home early. He sat quietly on the mat, tracing lines in the dust. Mariama knew something was wrong before he spoke. "Mama," he said, not looking at her, "the headmaster said I should not come tomorrow." Her chest tightened. "Why?" "He said the fees." She nodded slowly, already counting invisible money in her head. That night, Mariama cooked thin porridge. She pushed the bowl toward Sadiq. "Aren't you eating?" he asked. "I ate earlier," she lied. Sadiq watched her hands. They shook slightly. The drought arrived like a curse. The stream shrank. Work disappeared. The market stalls filled with food Mariama could not touch. Hunger moved from the background into the center of their lives. Sadiq began coughing at night, a dry, frightening sound that made Mariama sit up, heart pounding. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Mariama walked to the market with a decision growing heavier in her chest with every step. She stood among traders selling second-hand clothes, her eyes fixed on the ground. A man with tired eyes looked at her. "You want to sell?" She hesitated, then slowly untied the cloth from her waist. The air touched her skin like shame. The trader examined it, pulling at the edges. "Old." "It is strong," she whispered. He named a price so low it felt like an insult. Her first instinct was to walk away. But then she saw Sadiq's face in her mind, thin and hopeful. She nodded. When she returned home with rice, oil, and a little medicine, Sadiq stared at her waist. "Mama, your cloth." She forced a smile. "It was tired, my son." That night, Sadiq ate until he laughed. Mariama watched him, joy and grief mixing inside her like fire and water. Outside, the wind carried dust through the village. And somewhere deep in the silence, fate began to turn. After Mariama sold the cloth, the village noticed the change even before words explained it. In places like Kanyama, women read each other's lives the way elders read palm lines. They saw Mariama now wore borrowed wrappers, mismatched and slightly too short. They saw how she tied them tighter, as if pulling dignity closer to her skin. Some women pitied her. Others judged her in silence. Poverty, in the village, was both a shared enemy and a private shame. For a few weeks, the food in Mariama's hut tasted like relief. Rice replaced porridge. Palm oil glistened in the pot. Sadiq's cough softened. He returned to school with his head held higher, answering questions with a brightness that made his teacher pause and look at him longer than usual. "You are sharp, boy," the teacher said one afternoon. "Do not let hunger steal your future." Sadiq nodded, though he did not know how to answer hunger when it knocked. The money from the cloth disappeared quietly, the way water seeps into dry earth without ceremony. School fees were paid. Debts were settled. Medicine was bought. Then one morning, Mariama woke with a heaviness in her chest she could not push away. Her cough returned, deeper this time, carrying a sound that frightened even her. She tried to hide it. African mothers are trained in silence. They suffer quietly, believing pain is less dangerous when unannounced. But Sadiq noticed. He noticed how she stopped singing while cooking, how she sat down more often, how her breath whistled at night like wind through broken wood. One afternoon, while washing clothes by the stream, Mariama collapsed. The bucket rolled into the water. Women screamed. Someone ran to fetch help. By the time they carried her home, her body burned with fever. The village healer came, his bag filled with roots and leaves that smelled of earth and smoke. He pressed her chest gently, listened to her breathing, then shook his head slowly. "This sickness is not for me," he said. "She needs hospital medicine. City medicine." The word city fell into the hut like a stone. That night, Mariama lay awake while Sadiq slept curled beside her. The moonlight revealed his thin arms, the way his ribs rose when he breathed. She reached out and touched his face, memorizing it as if she were preparing for separation. At dawn, she called him close. "My son," she said softly, "you must go to the city." Sadiq sat up, confused. "Why?" "You will find my brother," she continued, avoiding his eyes. "Your uncle Karim. He lives there. He will help you." "But you are sick," Sadiq said, panic creeping into his voice. "I will be fine," she lied easily. Mothers do not break so easily. They packed what little he owned. One shirt. One short. His notebook. She gave him the remaining money, counting each note carefully. "Do not waste this," she warned gently. "And do not forget who you are." The journey to the city was long and merciless. Sadiq rode on the back of a crowded truck, wedged between sacks of maize and strangers whose faces told stories he was too young to understand. Dust burned his eyes. Hunger gnawed at his stomach. But hope pushed him forward. The city greeted him with noise and chaos. Buses roared. People shouted. Buildings rose like giants who did not care if he existed. After hours of wandering, he found his uncle's compound, crowded, loud, alive with children and arguments. Uncle Karim stared at him in disbelief. "You have grown," he said flatly. At first, things were tolerable. Sadiq slept on the floor, but he ate. He ran errands. He stayed quiet. He believed this was temporary. But city kindness is fragile. Karim's wife began to complain. "Another mouth," she said loudly. "Another burden." Sadiq became invisible during meals. He worked harder. He tried to earn his place. Weeks turned into months. Letters sent to Kanyama received no replies. Unknown to Sadiq, Mariama's strength was fading. She waited each day for news, sitting outside the hut, coughing into the dust. One evening, money went missing from Kareem's house. "Where is it?" Kareem demanded. "I don't know," Sadiq said truthfully. The slap came before the words finished. Accusations replaced trust. Hunger returned. One night, Sadiq was pushed out of the compound. "Go back to your village," Kareem shouted. "We are not your charity." But Sadiq had nowhere to go. At 12 years old, the city swallowed him. He slept under bridges, learned which streets were safe, which were deadly. He begged at traffic lights, dodging police batons. He met boys who laughed at pain because pain had already beaten them. They taught him how to survive. The first time Sadiq stole food, his hands shook so badly he dropped it. But hunger is persuasive. At night, he dreamed of his mother's voice calling his name. And back in Kanyama, Mariama waited, growing weaker, holding on to hope the way a drowning person clings to air. The city did not announce its lessons gently. It taught Sadiq through bruises, hunger, and silence. Days blended into one another until time itself felt meaningless. Morning meant surviving. Night meant staying alive. He learned which shopkeepers chased children away with curses and which ones looked the other way when bread went missing. He learned that police boots always came with anger, never mercy. He learned that when you are poor and alone, truth has no protection. The boys he slept with under the bridge had stories heavier than their bodies. One had lost his parents in a factory fire. Another ran from a village where war had erased names and faces. They shared food, jokes, and pain. They laughed loudly, as if laughter itself were armor. "You think too much," one boy told Sadiq one night. "Thinking is for people with full stomachs." But Sadiq could not stop thinking. His mother's face followed him everywhere, in puddles, in shop windows, in the moon hanging low over the city. Every cough he heard on the street sounded like hers. Every woman bending under a load reminded him of her thin back wrapped in borrowed cloth. Months passed. Then a year. Sadiq grew taller. Harder. His eyes lost their softness. Hunger shaped him into something sharper. When an older boy offered him work moving goods at night, Sadiq hesitated only briefly. "What kind of goods?" he asked. The boy smiled without humor. "The kind you don't ask questions about." At first, it was carrying boxes. Then watching corners. Then delivering packages. Money came faster than it ever had before. It felt dangerous and powerful at the same time. With money, he could eat. With money, he could sleep indoors sometimes. With money, he felt less invisible. But every coin carried weight. He avoided thinking about Kanyama. Letters never came. He told himself his mother was strong. He told himself he would return when he had enough to matter. One night, years later, in a dim bar filled with smoke and tired men, Sadiq overheard a conversation that stopped his heart. "Village woman, Kanyama sighed," a man said casually. "Died coughing like a drum with no skin." Sadiq stood up so fast his chair fell. "What did you say?" he demanded. The man looked annoyed. "Old news. Widow. Son never came back." The world collapsed. Sadiq left the bar without remembering how his feet moved. He wandered the streets until sunrise, his mind screaming with images, his mother sitting alone, waiting, coughing, hoping. Guilt wrapped around his throat like rope. He traveled to Kanyama the next day. The village looked smaller than memory. Poorer. Familiar and strange. Children stared at him, unsure who he was. He walked straight to the hut. It stood silent. An old woman recognized him. Her eyes softened with recognition and sadness. "You are Mariama's son." Sadiq nodded, unable to speak. "She waited," the woman said simply. "Every day." They showed him the grave. No stone, just earth and weeds. Sadiq fell to his knees. His cry tore through the village like thunder. Men turned away. Women wiped their eyes. "I came back," he whispered into the ground. "I came back too late." That night, He did not sleep. He remembered every moment, selling the cloth, leaving the village, choosing survival over return. Regret burned hotter than hunger ever had. In the days that followed, something inside him hardened, not into cruelty, but into resolve. He left the illegal work behind. The city had taught him how money moved. He decided to use that knowledge differently. He started small, transporting goods legally, saving every coin, trusting no one fully. Betrayal came quickly. Partners disappeared. Friends stole. The city tested him again and again. Each time, he stood back up, hearing his mother's voice in his head. Do not forget who you are. Years passed. Slowly, success followed discipline. Trucks multiplied. Contracts expanded. His name gained weight. But wealth did not erase guilt. Every night, Sadiq dreamed of a cloth fluttering in the wind. And every morning, he woke knowing he owed the world something. When Sadiq finally returned to Kanyama as a man in his 20s, the village seemed frozen in time, as if waiting for him to act. Children still played in the dust, goats still wandered aimlessly, and women still carried water on their heads. But Sadiq saw the difference immediately. Poverty was sharper than memory, sharper than the ache of his childhood hunger. And yet, beneath it all, he sensed the same resilience, the same stubborn refusal to surrender that had defined his mother. He went straight to the hut that had once been their home. The earth floor was cracked, the walls leaning with age. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and memory. He fell to his knees where she had slept, touching the ground that had held her weight, the place where her love had been endless. Tears ran down his face, unashamed. The village watched quietly. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to wait. He had returned with nothing but intention and determination. His trucks, his contracts, and the money he had accumulated over years in the city were all tools he could use to rewrite the story of Kanyama, not to erase grief, but to honor it. Sadiq wanted to build something that would mean something, not just for him, but for the memory of his mother and the children like him who had been left behind. The first thing he did was buy the land surrounding the hut. He repaired the structure as best he could, replacing the thatch with tin, strengthening the walls. But he knew bricks and mortar could not fix what had been lost. The hunger, the longing, the years without his mother, those would remain. Yet, he had learned that even small gestures could plant seeds of hope. He gathered the children of the village, boys and girls who had no shoes, no uniforms, no books. Sadiq spoke to them with a voice both gentle and commanding. I am Sadiq, he said. I am the son of Mariama. She gave me life and taught me to endure. I cannot bring her back, but I can help you live in ways I could not. You will study. You will eat. You will know that someone believes in you. Word spread quickly. Parents approached him hesitantly, skeptical of promises. But when Sadiq began providing food, pencils, notebooks, and uniforms, disbelief turned to gratitude. The village, which had known only scarcity for decades, began to feel the warmth of possibility. Sadiq also reached out to the elders, inviting them to advise him. He understood that the wisdom of those who had survived generations of drought, disease, and hardship was irreplaceable. He listened to their stories, their complaints, their laughter. In return, he shared his own journey, the city, the hunger, the betrayal, the survival. He wanted them to see that suffering could be a teacher, that pain could become purpose. Sometimes, late at night, he would wander to the grave of his mother. He would kneel, placing flowers and handfuls of fresh soil on her resting place. He spoke to her as if she were alive, recounting victories, business deals, and small successes in the village school. I did what I promised, he whispered, and I will keep going. I will not let your sacrifices vanish. The children thrived. Boys and girls who once ran barefoot now attended school with clean uniforms, reading aloud under the shade of mango trees. Mariama's legacy, though she was gone, lived in the laughter of those children, in the fullness of their bellies, in the hope now tangible in Kanyama. But success was not without challenge. Rivals from the city tried to take advantage of him. Some village members doubted his intentions. He faced betrayal again, as he had in the city, and yet each time he stumbled, he rose with renewed strength, guided by the memory of the mother who had sold her last cloth so he could live. One afternoon, Sadiq organized a village meeting. Everyone gathered, curious and cautious. He stood in front of them, tall and unwavering, and spoke with a voice that carried both authority and tenderness. "My mother gave me life," he said. "She gave me hope when all else failed. I failed to protect her, but I have learned that love is stronger than loss. I am here to ensure that no child in this village feels the hunger and despair that I once felt. Together, we will build a community where no one is left behind." The crowd listened in silence, absorbing each word. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to clap. Children ran forward to touch his hands, mothers wept, and even the elders nodded, their eyes reflecting approval and pride. Sadiq's promise had taken form. Years passed. Kanyama transformed. The school expanded. Roads were repaired. Families grew stronger. Children who had once stared at the sky in longing now dreamed of university, careers, and the world beyond the village. Sadiq watched all this with satisfaction tempered by remembrance. Every success was a tribute to his mother, every meal a testament to her sacrifice, every smile a reflection of her love. At night, when the village slept, Sadiq often sat by the edge of the small river that had once been their lifeline. He would dip his hands into the cool water and close his eyes, thinking of the cloth, the last one his mother had worn, sold to feed him. That moment, so long ago, had changed everything. It had shaped his destiny, forced him into the harshness of survival, and ultimately guided him toward compassion, wisdom, and purpose. In the quiet of these nights, he sometimes imagined her beside him, wrapped in that cloth, smiling at what he had become. "You made it," she seemed to say. "You lived. You carried us both forward." And indeed he had. Sadiq's life, forged in suffering, now radiated hope. The mother who had sold her last cloth had not just given him sustenance. She had given him strength, resilience, and a vision that would endure beyond generations. In honoring her memory, Sadiq honored every child who had ever been hungry, alone, and desperate. Kanyama, once a village defined by scarcity, had become a place of possibility. Children laughed, women carried water with pride, and elders shared stories with renewed vigor. Sadiq walked through the village one evening, the setting sun casting long shadows, and felt a profound sense of completion. He had turned tragedy into transformation, pain into purpose. And he knew, in every heartbeat, that his mother's love, silent, steadfast, and unyielding, had been the force behind it all. The cloth, though gone, lived in every act of kindness, every meal shared, every lesson taught, and every life changed. It was no longer just fabric, it was legacy. The ultimate proof that love, even in its quietest forms, can shape destinies, heal wounds, and rewrite the story of generations.